Welcome to all, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Karin Shuey, Vice President of the Washington Estonian Society, and we're very excited to host a distinguished panel to present this program on the making of Singing Revolution, the musical. We're thrilled that so many members of Estonian societies from across the country and Estonians and friends of Estonians from around the world have joined the event. We have audience members from the US, Estonia, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the Netherlands here tonight. So we're very happy to have everyone, and we hope you enjoy the program. I'll let Washington Estonian Society President Peter Kopperman introduce our guests, but I just want to go over a few administrative points. Our target is to present an hour-long program, and then we'll open the discussion to audience questions after that. We ask that you please submit audience questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom. You're welcome to enter chat comments throughout the program, but if you have a question that you'd like one of the panelists to address, please type it into the Q&A window. We'll get to as many of them as possible depending on how much time we have. So again, welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'll hand it over to Peter Kopperman, President of the Washington Estonian Society.
Thank you, Karin, and welcome everyone to this very special event. Today, we will be talking to creator Tony Spinosa about the making of Singing Revolution, the musical, and hearing some of the music. This includes the music video of Never Forget Who You Are, performed by singer-actress Kristi Roosmaa, who recorded it last summer at the Tallinn Song Festival Grounds. Our first guest is creator Tony Spinosa. Tony is an award-winning director and choreographer. His performance credits include the Broadway production of Peter Pan, starring Kathy Rigby, as well as national and international tours of A Chorus Line, Evita, and South Pacific. He was resident director of the Tony Award-winning revival of La Cage aux Folles, starring Kelsey Grammer and Douglas Hodge. And because of his creation of the Singing Revolution, the musical, he has twice been the guest of former Estonian President Toomas Hendrik Ilves at the Friends of Estonia conference in Tallinn. So without further ado, Tony Spinosa.
Thank you, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to chat about Singing Revolution, the musical.
Some of the audience might not be familiar with Estonia's Singing Revolution. Can you give us an overview of that part of Estonian history?
Of course. Singing Revolution refers to the years of 1987 to 1991, when the Estonians created several events to peacefully protest their occupation by the Soviet Union. I mean, all of these events involved singing their way to freedom. I'll say it again, they sang their way to freedom. I mean, no guns, no weapons, no violence. For me, it's the quintessential example of the power of song and the power of peaceful resistance. And then in August of 1991, the Estonians received their independence without one drop of bloodshed. I mean, the phrase Singing Revolution was coined by Heinz Valk, who was one of the leaders and organizers of the revolution, and he was also an artist and a journalist.
It's fascinating to me, Tony, and I think many in our audience, how you, an Italian-American, became so interested in Estonian history. How did that happen? And how did this interest eventually lead you to create a musical based on Estonia's Singing Revolution?
Yes, well, it was during my first trip to Tallinn in 2014. I was on a tour of the Baltic states, and we stopped in Tallinn for the day. And our tour guide took us around all of the sites in Old Town, and was quite charming and unique. But then she proceeded to take us to the Song Festival Grounds. And she started to tell us about the importance of singing to the Estonian culture, and then mentioned this Singing Revolution. Well, I began to research the events that transpired between 87 and 91, and I became fascinated with the fact that Estonians used the power of song as a shield against the Soviets to achieve their re-independence.
So now, Tony, how do you go from touring a city, in this case Tallinn, Estonia, to having a finished scripted musical?
Yeah, Well, having such a long career in the musical theater industry, I have a complete understanding of the structure of an American musical. It's a rather specific art form, much like the music hall is a very specific art form to the British culture. I then studied the classics and, Fiddler on the Roof and The King and I and Sound of Music, West Side Story, Oklahoma, and they all have a similar formula. For example, every musical has an opening number that sets the tone for the show, sets what you expect to be told in the evening. There's also an I Want song, which is usually sung by the hero very early on in the show, which tells you what the hero is trying to achieve within the story. There's things like the 11 o'clock number, which is sung very late in the show. And it's usually a tour de force sung by the hero about what he's accomplished. Those are just examples of some things that make up an American musical. After looking at the trajectory of the events that make up the Singing Revolution, it became really clear to me that this was truly a unique story that was the perfect subject matter for an American musical.
With your understanding of the structure of the American musical, how did you begin to research the content that will become the musical version of the Singing Revolution?
Yeah, great question. Well, one of the first sources that I found was the documentary by James and Maureen Tusty. The documentary gave me a clear picture of the beginnings of Estonian culture and then articulated all the events that happened during the revolution. For example, the first spontaneous night song festival, where almost 300,000 Estonians came to the Song Festival Grounds to sing about their Estonian heritage for 3 days. Events like the Baltic Chain, which was a 400-mile-long human chain of 2 million people that stood in protest against the Soviet occupation. I mean, there's the attack on Toompea Castle, which was their government building. The attack was much like the insurrection that happened in our capital most recently. The Soviets tried to attack the castle, but instead of fighting back, the Estonians came and flooded the streets of Tallinn and surrounded the castle until the attackers would withdraw. And it was almost like watching the parting of the Red Seas, where they opened up an alley so that the attackers could withdraw. I mean, this raw footage from the documentary of the actual event is riveting to watch. After that, about a year after that, watching the documentary with the help of Eva Marie Lemetz, who at the time was the consulate general in Estonia in New York, also Kristi Roosmaa, who was the cultural affairs coordinator of the Ministry of Culture in New York, and then Ret Remmel in Tallinn, who was the counselor of international affairs at the Department of International Relations at the Estonian Ministry of Culture. With the help of these three people, I was invited to Tallinn to interview the leaders of the Singing Revolution, many of whom are still alive today.
Who were some of the people that you interviewed? And how receptive were they to speak with an American theater professional?
They were so welcoming, Peter. It was a magical experience. To name a few of the people I interviewed, Yuri Just was one of the first people he was the first person that I interviewed. And he was one of the two soldiers that was up in the Tallinn TV tower when there was the final standoff of the revolution, when the Soviets were trying to take down the communication with the rest of Europe. I also interviewed Trivimi Valesti and Marju Lariston, who were also leaders and organizers of the Popular Front, which was the organization that was raising awareness about Estonian independence. They were key players in assembling the Baltic Chain and the peaceful protest at the attack of Toompea Castle. Lagle Parek was one of the Estonian politicians that was jailed 3 times by the Soviets for speaking out about Estonian preservation and freedom. I mean, this is just a few of the people that I interviewed, but it was fascinating to hear their firsthand accounts of these historic events and how they inspired and executed them.
Now that the research was complete and you had a scripted musical, please tell us a bit about the Singing Revolution, the musical. Okay, what is the main story there?
You want the elevator pitch. Okay. So Singing Revolution is a Europop musical in which modern-day star-crossed lovers are involved in the Estonian Revolution to regain independence from the Soviet Union. Inspired by the real-life events on the quaint streets of Tallinn, Estonia, locals struggle for their freedom and the preservation of Estonian culture. The situation becomes complicated when an Estonian falls in love with the Soviet commander's daughter.
How much of the musical story is authentic, and how much is fictional?
Well, all of the events of the Singing Revolution are historically accurate. We didn't change any of that. That is true history. The first spontaneous night song festival, the Baltic chain, the attack on Toompea Castle, all of it is in there. We've created fictitious characters based on the people that I interviewed to drive the story, a critical element in telling an American musical. Our primary central characters, including the Estonian who's leading the revolution and his love interest, the Soviet commander's daughter. It's interesting because I'm often asked about the device of the Estonian falling in love with the Soviet commander's daughter. And James Bearhart, my co-writer, and I came up with that dramatic device for the musical after I hired a tour guide in Tallinn to take me around to the places where the events of the Singing Revolution took place. And he was a Russian fellow named Dmitry, and he shared a very interesting light on the intermingling of Russians and Estonians during that time. I mean, there are many mixed relationships happening, and some were secret and some were very open about their choices. And James and I took this concept and layered it into our main characters who meet when they are 17 and 18 years old, the age of innocence. And let's face it, the world was starting to accept different ethnicities marrying during the late 80s. So there are many points in history and many points in musical theater where we see this kind of attraction happen. I mean, one example is Anna Leonowens and the King of Siam and the King and I. And this is clearly a love story of two people from completely different worlds who found love for one another despite their cultural differences. You could also cite The Sound of Music, Liesel and Ralph. Again, we see young, innocent love happening between two people from very different sides of history.
When writing a musical, do you write the story and then some of the dialogue just becomes song? Tell us, how do the story and song come together?
That's a really great question, Peter, because it really depends when and how the inspiration hits you for different parts of the story. In this instance, once I became inspired by the events that made up the Singing Revolution, the first song of the show was the first thing that was written. I mean, I knew that I wanted the score to the show to be contemporary because I wanted the story to entertain and educate a younger audience. You know, we're in a time in American musical theater where we're bringing younger audiences to the theater through shows like Hamilton and Dear Evan Hansen. And I see this show following the same trajectory as those contemporary musicals. I was inspired by a country that could sing their country free. And that became the theme I wanted to start the storytelling from. I mean, you know, let's have a look at the video. And the video stars Broadway veteran Neil Haskell singing Lift It Up.
Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up. We can sing our country free. inside there's a dormant song. Though it gets drowned out, it is never gone. In every man and in every child, our independence carry for miles. Round the world it keeps ringing on. It's in our blood and in our veins. Hear the message that we say. We won't run, we won't wait. Keep the anthem ever raised. See the walls start to break. There's no time to hesitate. Now's the time to liberate. Now's the time. Lift it up, lift it up. We can sing our country free. Lift it up, we will show them all we can be. Lift it up, cut through all of the red of our past regrets and rise. Lift it up, let us see a new history and sing our country free. It's time to call for declaration. After all, we are the new nation. I'm patiently waiting for our time to make it. The point is we made it. From the shore of the Baltic Sea, with the long summer nights a week, celebration in our history, finding energy out of the deep. So lift it up, sing it. So bring it on, bring it on. We're never gonna stop singing. We're never gonna stop, never gonna stop singing. So bring it on, bring it on. We're never gonna stop singing. So lift it up, never gonna stop, lift it up.
What a fantastic and powerful performance. And what a catchy song. I mean, that's really something.
Thank you, Peter. We were very lucky to have Neil Haskell debut the music to the show.
I know that you were on a fast track to bring the show to stage. Some members of the Washington Estonian Society were lucky enough to be at the Kennedy Center in Washington when one of your songs was debuted with the Märt-Tägu dance troupe in November of 2019. That same weekend, your music was also performed live at the EANC Gala. And in February 2020, you presented the musical at the Independence Day celebration for the South Florida Estonian Society. You had planned to meet Estonians across the country for fundraising events for the Los Angeles world premiere. Then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So now tell me, how has the pandemic impacted the show? And what are the things that you have done to keep your project moving forward?
Yeah, well, we were really on a wonderful roller coaster getting the show up to its world premiere in Los Angeles for February 14th, 2021. And then the pandemic hit. And, the pandemic has paralyzed the theater industry in the United States for the past 14 months. I mean, that's just the reality of this situation. And, with the help of Valav Laub and Kristi, of course, major help, and Harrison Beck, we tried to figure out how we can keep the musical alive, keep it in people's brains that we're still working on this musical. So a few days before the lockdown, it was literally like 5 days before the lockdown, we went into the recording studio with Kristi to record Never Forget Who You Are. It was the first time we were putting that down in the studio. And then COVID happened. And we sat down and we said, okay, how can we keep ourselves present so that people know this is still happening? And by coincidence, Kristi happened to be flying to Estonia to see family. So we started to put our heads together on what we can do. And we said, well, let's see if we can film Kristi in Tallinn singing Never Forget Who You Are. And then pieces started to come together. And, let's have a look at the behind the scenes video, and then we'll chat a little bit more about how that came together after. So let's cut to video, please.
Stopping my video.
Never forget who you are. Today we're filming Singing Revolution, the musical Never Forget Who You Are music video. It's a musical that is written by Tony Spinosa and James Bearhart, and it's kind of hard to describe what I feel.
My name is Vivian Tada. I am the music video director for Never Forget Who You Are, featuring Kristi Roosmaa, and we're currently prepping. It's been really, really great to get to work with an international client and executive producer like that, and everybody's just been super lovely in letting me, spread my creative wings, so to say. We're gonna get into the big dress now and do the big finish with the candles and everything, but everything's been smooth so far.
The song is about values in life. There's a small part in it that is in Estonian, and that part reveals the values that I'm singing about. Stay true. That's a wrap! Oh my goodness.
Well, it's very easy to work with a talent such as this one. It was, at some points, it was literally just, okay, you do your thing, I'm just gonna go focus on the camera movements. But we will see in the editing room what will actually become of this.
Wow, that was a fascinating view into the behind the scenes of putting together a music video, as well as how you worked on different continents. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That had to present some challenges.
You're telling me. Yeah. It was quite an endeavor. And, Peter, it takes a village. There were so many people involved to make this happen. It was a wonderful experience. But, so I explained that Kristi was taking a trip to Tallinn to visit some family. So Kristi is so connected. I'm so glad that I met her. She not only connected me with people who were leaders of the revolution, but once she got to Tallinn, she was able to find a student director that was just graduating the university at the time to direct and produce the video in Tallinn. She found an up-and-coming costume designer who lent us this beautiful dress for the film shoot. The administration of the Tallinn Song Festival Grounds actually donated the festival grounds for the day of the shoot, along with the electricity. Vivian Sade, the director out there, was invaluable in coordinating all of this. She actually spent a lot of time in the Tallinn archives to find actual footage from the revolution so we could intersperse it with the video of Kristi singing on the Tallinn Song Festival Ground stage. I thank Harrison Beck for orchestrations. I thank the Tallinn Song Festival Grounds. I thank Kristi immensely. Harrison Beck, Val of Loud, you're all invaluable to this process, as is everybody else who participated. And it did take a village to make it happen.
Well, thank you, Tony. I mean, it shows you the nexus of forces that come together and make something wonderful happen.
Thank you.
Now, this brings us to our next guest, Kristi Roosmaa. Kristi is an award-winning Estonian-born actress, singer, and producer. Her latest career highlights include performing with Residente, featuring Bad Bunny on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, singing as a soloist at Carnegie Hall, and appearing in numerous off-Broadway shows and indie films. Most recently, she's been recognized for her music video, Never Forget Who You Are, from the Singing Revolution, the musical, and for producing and starring in the heartfelt, award-winning independent short film, Wildflower. Please welcome Kristi Roosmaa.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Peter, for the introduction. I'm really happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Now, how did you end up getting involved in this musical?
So Tony's life coach, Justin, put us in contact via email, and I remember the day I met Tony vividly. We met up at Time Warner Center on October 5th, 2015, and Without a doubt, I was pretty intrigued to find out more about this American producer, director, author, and about his plan to write a musical about my country's special story. So to my surprise, by that time, Tony's done quite a bit of research and that was off to a really good start. So I was hooked immediately. And while meeting me, Tony didn't know that I was working for the Estonian Minister of Culture as a cultural affairs coordinator. And I gave him an introduction to many people that have helped Tony dig deeper into our historical events and then sense them through their eyes and understand better our culture and nation. So, fast forward 6 years and here we are getting ready for our world premiere in Los Angeles. And it really has been really exciting to be part of planting the seed and now seeing it grow.
You're singing a song called Never Forget Who You Are. Tell us about that song.
This song is probably one of the most meaningful songs I've sang in my life. And one reason is because I can relate to the character. And the other is that I've had a chance to work on this from scratch. In a nutshell, it's a song about staying true to yourself. And in the musical, it is sung by an Estonian woman, Mia, who is a dedicated wife and a mother. And she has just found out that her husband is taken away by the Russians, which basically means she'll never gonna see him again. And she has to break that news to her son, Heinz, who is just a young boy. And on top of that, Heinz comes home after hanging out with a Russian girl, and he's very happy about that. So, if Mia could, she would drop on the floor and cry her eyes out. But she can't because she has a job to do. And her job is being a mother and being there for her child. So with this song, you see her go through a lot of emotions like pain, doubt, fear, love, and at the end of it, finding the strength to keep going. And I think that this is something that all of us can relate to, to keep going when life throws us curveballs. So, yeah.
Well, I think all of us know what it's like when curveballs get thrown at us, given all of the events of the past year.
Yes, we do.
You recorded the song in New York at Miratone Studio. How did you prepare for the recording, and what was that process like?
So the very first step was figuring out the structure of the song. And then Tony, our arranger, Harrison, and we had several rehearsals. And once we were all set with the structure of the song, we started playing around with the vocals. And once we were all set with the vocals, that's when my job as an actress-singer started. And I always do a set of exercises that really helped me develop a character and get really specific with a song. And I bring it to my coach who advises me. And basically, I live and breathe it. So by the day of recording, I really knew what I was doing. And to have a chance to be at a recording studio, it's a privilege. It is so exciting and thrilling and also nerve-wracking because every minute counts. So, you want to be really well rested and know what you're doing, but also open enough for all kinds of suggestions. For example, when we were recording the chorus, then Tony and Harrison told me to improvise. And it is always such a treat for a singer to have that kind of freedom, but it's not that easy to execute, especially when you had to do it on a fly. So of course my heart was racing, but I just, smiled back to the boys who were standing behind the window and said, sure. And or another moment when Harrison told me that I have to record the ensemble parts. And again, it's not like we had the time to really practice that. So we sang them through and then started recording. So when you hear the choir singing underneath my voice, then behind my voice, then that's actually me singing. So I mean, I guess it's very evident. I really had that time of my life.
Oh, it certainly seems that way when you see the video. And I know a lot of our audience is waiting to see it, and they will. You filmed a music video for the song Never Forget Who You Are in the middle of the pandemic in Estonia. Can you tell us about that experience?
Yes, so the whole process, pre-production, production, and post-production took place in the middle of the pandemic. And as Tony said, our initial plan was to film it in New York, but once the pandemic hit and everything closed down, then we changed the location since I was heading overseas anyway. And Estonia was doing quite well. Everything was open, and Corona was relatively non-existent at that moment. So we had a wonderful filming day. As Tony said, our director was a young, fresh out of school, cum laude graduate, Vivian Sada, and her work was remarkable, highly professional and then very thorough. So it was a wonderful day. And I guess the only real issue we had was on the morning of the filming when our makeup artist called us and said that she has a sore throat. Obviously, we couldn't have her on set that day. So I had to do my own makeup for the first part of the day. And we were lucky enough to find a makeup artist for the second part of the day when I was wearing that gorgeous Lena Stain gown. And as far as for the pre-production and post-production, just like Tony said, everything happened via Skype. Tony was on West Coast, I was in Estonia or New York, and Vivian was in Estonia. So thank God for Skype.
And thank God for Zoom, and we can hold meetings like this.
Yes, absolutely.
It's truly a special song. What is your favorite part of the song?
The part where I sing in Estonian, and because of the meaning behind it. It is the quietest part of the song where I can barely breathe and always fight back tears. And if you do not speak Estonian, then you can feel and the essence throughout the song. So in this part, Mia, the Estonian woman who's singing the song, she reveals three things that matter the most to her: homeland, love, and faith.
Very powerful. How did it feel now, standing on the Song Festival grounds to record this video, remembering your childhood participation in the song festivals during the time of the Soviet occupation?
It felt surreal. I felt a mixture of competing feelings, astonishment, respect, honor, loneliness, gratitude, and flashbacks to my childhood when I was standing on that grand stage with the sea of people. It really hit me though when I was standing in front of the festival grounds, almost like my life, being away from my homeland for 17 years. I may be standing outside, but my heart is right there on the festival grounds with my people.
It's really amazing. Thank you for sharing how touching that is. I know everyone has been waiting, so now let's have a look at that video. Never forget who you are.
Never forget who you are. Don't let time's arrow change you. Never forget who you are, so you can always stay true. The good and the bad, it's all that we have to stop us from repeating the path we have tread. So never forget, they hold the key to your heart. The road that we choose could mean we can lose. So look deep within to win. These actions we take determine our fate. The choices we make stamp history's day. Never forget who you are. Don't let time's arrow change you. Never forget who you are, so you can always stay true. Ära sa iial unusta, mis on su kalleim vara. Kodumaa armastusi jahus, nendeta pole lootus. Never forget who you are. Don't let time's arrow change you. Never forget who you are, so you can always stay true. Never forget who you are. Don't let time's arrow change you. Never forget who you are, so you can always stay, always stay, always stay true. Stay true. Ooh, stay true.
Wow, it just leaves you speechless. It's goosebumps, really, from watching that performance. It's really very, very special. I mean, Tony and Kristi, this is just truly an inspiration. I am very moved by the choice of having the actual archival footage of the events in Estonia during the singing revolution and some of the period prior with the Soviet occupation, juxtaposed with Kristi singing on the Song Festival Grounds in modern day with that beautiful dress and her beautiful voice. I think it speaks to everyone, not only Estonians. It speaks to everyone about the courage and integrity of peaceful resistance.
Thank you, Peter. I want to express my sincere thanks to the support of the Washington Estonian Society and the Estonian-American National Council. Your never-ending support is very, very appreciated. Thank you for this lovely conversation.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you, Kristi, for being with us here today.
Oh, thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us tonight. So thank you.
Thank you both for your fascinating insight into this beautiful new musical. I know I can't wait to see it all put together. Now let's take some questions from our viewers. We're going to go back to Karin Shuey, and she's going to pose questions that the viewing audience has entered into the Q&A box within the Zoom software. Karin?
Right, well, first, I just want to say that was a fascinating conversation, and to thank all three of you very much for getting us all excited to see the final product. So with that in mind, we do have several questions coming in, and I want to remind everybody to please use the Q&A function, not the chat, if you want one of these, if you want to address a question directly to one of our panelists. And I should also say that we have been recording this program, and we'll post it in the next couple days, and we'll send out the link to everybody so that you can watch it again or share it with your friends, anybody who you thought might like to see it. Okay, so here's a question. So we're wondering, what are the next steps? And so where do you go from here? And how much is COVID still holding you back?
Sure, I'll take that question. What's interesting is that we are now seeing a light at the end of the tunnel of this pandemic here in California. And Governor Newsom has recently said that June 15th, we're going to pretty much start to open up, which is wonderful that we've chosen Los Angeles for the world premiere, because that means we can start to put the process together. It takes about 3 months of pre-production in order to get a show up, between assembling the creative team and rehearsing and getting it up on its feet. So at this point, we're hoping for a November opening in Los Angeles for the world premiere.
Great. Okay. So the LA crowd gets the first shot at being in the audience. That's great. Okay, so here's one. Tony, who composed the song Lift It Up and the others? And then how many songs do you plan to compose, or have you already composed for the show?
Sure. The entire score has been composed. There are 23 songs in total. Some of them are reprises, which is common in musicals. I wrote the songs, the music, and I co-wrote the lyrics with my co-writer, James Bearhart.
Great. And who was the writer of the Estonian language part in Never Forget Who You Are?
That's Kristi.
That was Kristi, did it on her own. That's great. Thank you. So we have someone asking what cities your show will tour in and when. And this is specifically someone from Seattle who would very much like to go.
Oh, if you're in Seattle, talk to the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle. We would love them to pick up the show and, give a full-blown production that could end up as a national tour or end up going straight to Broadway. Seattle Fifth Avenue Theater, I hope you're listening.
I think we have some connections there, so that's great. Okay, so here's a question for Kristi. How closely are your family and friends in Estonia following your work on the musical, and what do they think about it?
Very closely, and not just my family and friends, but Estonians all over, Estonians in the States, and Estonians in Canada, Sweden, Finland, and so on, and also people that are not Estonians, and I mean, everyone is just so excited and really rooting for us and can't wait to see it on stage. And as I'm reading the chat, that's what everyone is asking, is the date set for premiere, and when is it going to be on stage? So I'm handing it over now to Tony.
Right, there were a lot of questions about when will it be performed in different cities, and are you planning any promotion to coincide with the 30th anniversary of Estonia's restoration of independence in August?
It's hard to answer because of the pandemic and how we're going to fall out, what the aftermath is, how we're going to open up after this. It's a lot of technical things with unions and when we're allowed to go back to work. So in my mind, we're shooting for a November opening in Los Angeles, which will be the beginning of the live stage version of it. And that's the best guess I can give at this point. We still may need to adjust that timeline, but that would be the beginning of when this musical is first seen on stage, and then we'll have it grow from there.
Well, our friends in Toronto and Vancouver are also saying, please don't forget about Canada.
No, not at all. Not at all. We would love to perform in Canada. I've resident directed several shows
Not
up in
at all.
Toronto. And I'd love to come back there.
Great. Well, so it sounds like everybody's just going to have to be patient and maybe wait until next year. So I don't want to elicit any spoilers, but I guess I was also wondering if you could tell us as much as you can about other characters you plan to develop in the storyline.
Sure. There are some secondary characters. So our main characters, let me start there. Our main characters are Sophia, the Soviet commander's daughter, and Tavi, who is the Estonian who is leading the revolution. We have our secondary characters, which are Lena, the Estonian school teacher, and Victor, the Russian school teacher. They sort of parallel the storyline of our main characters. And then we also have the villain in the show, the Soviet commander, Nikolai. From there, we have our tertiary characters, which are Mia, Tavi's mother, Rasmus, Tavi's father. We have Stalin, Lenin, and Gorbachev as tertiary characters. So that's about as far as I'm going to go with the character breakdown, but that's where we are at this point.
Wow. Well, that is definitely a good teaser to see how all those fit together in the story. So now we have another question. How is your pre-operating funding going?
Thanks to the Estonian-American National Council, we are very far along on our funding. We've got half of our budget. The budget for the show is 200,000, and right now we've raised 100,000. So we are still moving forward on our fundraising events. Hopefully they'll happen in August and September. So we'll be fully funded by the time we get around to the show in November.
Great. So I am seeing a question in the chat for Kristi. I don't know if you saw it. Has there been any discussion about you singing a song or songs from the musical at Laulupidu?
Not as of now, but of course I'd love to sing it at Laulupidu. So they are on our radar, and we're working on that. So fingers crossed. Or if you have a good contact, so we would be happy to talk to them.
That's
Yes, it would be absolutely wonderful to sing the song, at Laulupidu. Yeah.
Kristi and I have discussed that because it's a dream of ours, and we think Never Forget Who You Are speaks so loudly to the Estonian culture and community that we would love for it to be sung at Laulupidu. Yes.
That's great. Okay, so we have a comment. What an amazing accomplishment. Very moving from Tita Mondi. And then Michael Sims asks, it all sounds extraordinary. I can't wait to hear more of the songs. What a gorgeous music video. And I'd love to know what it is that you hope audiences take away from the singing revolution.
I hope that they realize the power of peaceful resistance, that nothing really gets solved by violence, that peaceful resistance is the way the world needs to progress, especially with everything that's going on today in America. There's no need for violence. Peaceful resistance, the power of peaceful resistance. That's the message I want to get across. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, it's a great message and a great question. And then one more from Ep. So she says, the music is of course copyrighted, but when will the sheet music be available?
I haven't thought of when the sheet music is going to be available, but if you'd like a copy, I can definitely get you a copy of the score.
Okay, so TMI is asking, do you have a website or way to follow you? Maybe I don't know if we can post a link maybe to the Facebook page in the chat so people can get that, and then maybe Ep can follow that also to contact you about getting the sheet music. I'm just trying to set up some engagement here.
Sure. You can always follow us at www.singingrevolutionthemusical.com. We are also on Facebook, Singing Revolution the Musical. And that's the best way to contact us. We're constantly monitoring both of those sites for interest and questions.
Right. So I think our host just put that link in the chat. And then Peter Bates is interested in info on funding. I want to share with philanthropic donor candidates for this project. So how can somebody get in touch with you about that?
Sure, please go to the website and either contact me directly through the contact form, or there is a donate button right on the site, which brings you to our fiscal sponsor, Fractured Atlas, who is covering our 501c3 support for the musical.
Great. So I've got another comment here. Thank you this is from Lily. Thank you, Tony. This will be an awesome performance once we get past COVID. The presentation is showing the progress that has been made with your production. The music is fabulous. Can't wait for the opening.
Thank you. Me too.
How many cast members are there? That's also from Lily.
For the Los Angeles production, there will be 16 cast members. However, once the show starts to develop further, I think it will be a cast of 22 to 26.
Okay. What are we doing? So I also have a question from Ep about how many participants are now on Zoom, and I can say there's 105. The breakdown of Estonian versus other American, and there's an international audience too. That's harder for me to look up, on the fly, but maybe we'll post something to the Facebook page when we announce the video, and we'll say, sort of a breakdown of the audience members too. That's probably something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, Karin, I think there's a number of things people have asked for, and we can look at what the most effective way to communicate between our Facebook page, our website, and we can email information out to people who registered for this particular webinar.
Absolutely, yeah. So here's another good question from Lily. Lily's just full of great questions. Thank you. Are the donations tax deductible?
Yes, they are 100% tax deductible. That's because Fractured Atlas is our umbrella fiscal sponsor. So yes, they are 100% tax deductible.
And then if they go to that website, they just have to specify that the donation is for Singing Revolution. Is that how it works?
No, the donate button will take them directly to donating right to Singing Revolution the musical.
Great.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And that button is on the Singing Revolution Facebook and website?
It is on the website. It is not on the Facebook page, but the Facebook page will guide you to the website.
Okay. Perfect. I am not seeing any more questions. Does anybody want to slide one more in? So Ep says, from my view, getting to outside the Esto community is the important part, I guess.
And I will say this, that I've written this musical to educate American audiences specifically, because it is an American musical, but I want Americans to know more about Estonia, because the integrity and the determination that they had to succeed through peaceful protest, I think is an amazing example for our country today. And I want people to know more about Estonia. When I say it's about Estonia, I don't want them to say Astoria. No, it's a country it's the Republic of Estonia. It's a magical place, and with people who have a wonderful heart that peacefully resists to get what they need. It's a magical story.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's another one. How has, from Thomas, I'm not going to try to mess that up. Las Vitas does not sound like an Estonian name, so that's good. We are reaching beyond that audience right now. So he asks, how has this been received within Estonia? By the way, I'm not Estonian, but I can't wait to see this musical. So how has it been received within Estonia?
The Estonians have been very welcoming and helpful to this point. I've been on Estonian television several times because of the music video that Kristi starred in, because of performing at the Kennedy Center with Mart Agu. So my experience thus far, oh, and of course, interviewing the people who led the revolution, my experience this far has been very welcoming, and I think they'll be very proud of what we've accomplished.
Mhm.
Great. So we're getting lots of thank you for an interesting and informative presentation. And a huge, big thank you to all. Something wonderful to support and look forward to from Amy and Kent in Seattle, who I know very well. And then we have another question. Taken the various misrepresentations of Estonia in Western media, largely due to Russian media attacks and biased journalism, how does this production guarantee a historic accuracy of the storyline, and how will it reflect on Estonia as a whole in the United States?
I think that it will bring awareness of Estonia to the American population. As far as my research, I've been as accurate as I possibly can with how the events unfolded during the Singing Revolution. So I'm, I know there's always two sides to the story, but the artistic vision that I have for the show is the story that I've been able to tell through the experiences I've heard from the people who led the revolution.
There are plenty of sources out there blasting us with Russian disinformation, and I think you clearly are not going to be one of them in any way. And if anything, this will certainly try to counter that. It'll be a great vehicle maybe to counter all of that.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. So Erica asks, will you tour in Estonia?
It is my hope that we'll tour in Estonia. You know, it's like any other of the American musicals that happen. Eventually, they get an international tour going on. And in my mind, Estonia would be the first stop to bring it international.
Maybe after Canada. I don't know.
Okay. After Canada, we'll go to Estonia.
Or you guys will find it out. I don't know. Okay. Do you have preliminary plans for performances after the opening in LA?
Well, my strategy for getting the musical further is to debut it in Los Angeles, because there are theaters like the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle, La Jolla Playhouse, the Old Globe. There's several theaters on the West Coast that will come down to see productions in LA, in the hope that these are projects that they want to fully develop and bring further. So that is my trajectory of how the musical is going to progress.
Great. Okay, I'm going to combine the next two from IMDb and TMI. Will any more of the musical be recorded in Estonia, and will the film footage be part of the musical?
With the version I have in my mind for the Los Angeles production, yes, we are incorporating visuals from the actual Singing Revolution to help support the storytelling. When it goes on further, that's up to the director how that is presented. But for the first incarnation of it, yes, it will have visuals from the revolution.
And then will more of the film, oh wait, what was the other one? Will more of the musical be recorded in Estonia?
I have to say 11 of the songs have been recorded, and you can hear them on the website and on SoundCloud.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the website, they will bring you, there's a tab there for media, and you can hear 11 of the songs that have already been recorded. So everything's being recorded here in the States at this point.
Great, okay. So Tina Gravas says, I'm sure many of the Estonians that were listening to Kristi singing were crying. Beautifully done, and brought back all those feelings we felt back then. Thank you all for this musical. Very touching. And then so
when you're working with a talent like Kristi, it's very easy.
Yeah. No doubt.
Oh, thank you. And thank you everyone for the kind words. And it means so much. It really does.
So will there be more songs in Estonian as part of the musical? Love the two, or the one we just heard.
At this point, that is the only song that has Estonian lyrics in it. Yeah, that is the only song at this point that has Estonian lyrics. You know, when it does go international, especially when it goes to Estonia, I can't predict, but I'm sure more of the lyrics will be changed into Estonian for that audience, but that's yet to be determined.
So here's an anonymous question. How much pushback are you getting from Russian Estonians?
You know, in the arts, you get pushback from anything you do. Everybody has a different opinion on it. And I just remain true to my artistic integrity that I have a clear, true vision of what this musical needs to represent for Estonia.
Great. Okay, we've got a comment. Kristi, beautiful song, words, and voice. Kudos to all from Canada. Look forward to seeing the play. Denon. And next, will you contact Dave? So this is from Myre Enya Stockton. Will you contact David Mervish to hopefully stage the musical here in Toronto? So there's a Toronto contact for you.
I have worked for David Mervish, and I have several contacts up in Canada that were ready to approach David right before COVID hit. So we are waiting. You know, Canada's having a tough time getting out of COVID right now, but it is on my hit list when theater does open up in Canada to hit Mervish about it.
Great. Okay, so Lily asks, Tony, are you considering changing your name to Dunul?
You know, I sort of like that.
Oh, I love this one.
But I have been donned an honorary Estonian by many people, including Kristi, because of the research and the history that I'm very versed in at this point.
Perfect. I think it's very fitting. And then will we be able to see Estonian singers on stage? Maybe some well-known singers from the revolution?
I'm not sure how to answer that. You know, depending where the productions take place, depending on who's available, you know, there are people that I have in mind that would make would be wonderful characters in the show. You know, Uku Suviste actually performed several of my songs at the EV100 Gala several years ago in New York City. And I mean, Uku is an amazing talent and did a wonderful job, and he'd be a wonderful Tavi if we get to that point, you know, being able to hire someone of that stature.
Okay, well, that is the end of this. Unless somebody wants to sneak one more question in, that's the end of the list right now.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I mean, it's wonderful that this program has been able to generate such interest. It's, you know, the number of questions, the type of questions, the interests of support for Tony and the show, I think is fantastic. So on behalf of the Washington Estonian Society, I would like to thank our very special guests this evening, Tony Spinosa and Kristi Roosmaa. In addition, I would like to thank Dex Ostling for his production and technical support, and Karin Shuey, our Washington Estonian Society Vice President. I want to extend a special thank you to the Estonian-American National Council, whose support of our society and the Estonian societies across the United States help make programs like this possible. Have a wonderful evening, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you, everyone. Mwah.
Thank you.
Our country is a place that craves for freedom once again. The torture and the fighting needs to end here for all men. To our homes, and to our work, and to each other. We owe it to ourselves to join together hand in hand. Our past is what strengthens and ties us firmly to this land. To our homes, and to our work, and to each other. Most of all, oh Estonia, may you live forever in our hearts until the day we see our fingers touch what our minds What if we let our wildest dreams awaken once again? We had some faith and trusted this was more than just pretend. For our homes, for our work, and for each other, the liberty could grow out of the things we thought we did. And fear put to the fire made us stronger within. To our home, to our fear, and to each other, but most of all, oh Estonia, may you live forever in our hearts until the day we see our fingers touch what our minds have dreamed. A better life and love for you and me. I wanna win our freedom, the joy is setting free. I wanna stand up and fight to fulfill our victory. Oh Estonia, may you live forever in our hearts until the day we meet. That's what I'm fighting for. Every mother, every father that is gone, every child, every daughter, every son, for the broken, for the weary and the lost, we can't give up. Oh Estonia, may you